Absolutely massive announcement today, guys, from Hamilton ETFs. We're getting our first 0 DTE or 0 days to expiry or daily covered call, whatever you want, ETFs in Canada. So these are going to be covered call ETFs, everyone. Well, does it actually say covered calls? It doesn't say covered calls. It says ultra short options. So I guess it could be puts, but I'm assuming they're going to be calls. But anyway, Hamilton ETFs is going to launch 3 0 DTE options, or let's say income ETFs in Canada. And I had a sigh of relief when I saw this, and they're going to have 25% leverage. So that's fantastic news. They're calling them Daymax. They trademarked it. So I guess yield maximizer. They're going to have a Daymax series for these 0 DTE 25% leverage income oriented ETF. So let's just go see the three ETFs together, and hopefully the objectives as well. So the preliminary prospectus has been filed. So my estimate is that maybe they'll come out within a month, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit shorter, but it's usually about a month or so after they filed the preliminary prospectus, or 3 weeks, something like that. So there's going to be CDAY, SDAY, and QDAY. CDAY is Enhanced Canadian Equity. My eyebrows went up when I saw that, because I said, well, there's no 0 DT options in Canada, is there? But basically, it's going to provide exposure to Canadian equities or Canadian stocks, but it's going to employ an actively managed ultra short-term option strategy on its North American equity exposure. So maybe they're going to hold Canada stocks primarily, like it says here, primarily, but not exclusively to Canadian equities. And then I guess they'll have their US exposure, where they'll write the 0 DTE options, most likely on the S&P 500, maybe the NASDAQ, maybe the Russell, but I'm assuming it's going to be the S&P 500. I'm assuming here, and by the way, guys, for sure, there's going to be a video with Patrick and the guys at Hamilton to go over the details 100%. But in today's video, I just want to cover the announcement, the three ETFs, and maybe give a guesstimate of how much these ETFs are going to yield. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So the next one is going to be SDAY. This is called the Enhanced US Equity Daymax ETF. So providing primarily exposure to US equities with the option strategy, short-term option strategy. And then QDAY is the Hamilton Enhanced Technology, so primarily exposure to US technology stocks. To supplement the income earned from its holding, QDAY employs an actively, so the same thing. So it doesn't seem, I don't think they're actually going to hold the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100. I think maybe what they'll do is maybe it'll hold the S-Max ETF, and maybe this will hold the Q-Max ETFs, and then they'll write daily options on the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. Maybe SDAY is going to be S&P 500 daily calls or puts, and QDAY is going to be NASDAQ 100 because it's closely tied to technology. So I'm not sure exactly what they're going to hold or how they're going to work, but Hamilton usually comes up with these different ideas and more unique ideas to, from what I, and by the way, I hope my face wasn't covering the text here. But just like HYLD and instead of just going with the S&P 500, they chose the individual stocks because it's better, more efficient to write options on. So instead of holding the indexes, maybe they'll do some sort of where it's very close to the S&P 500, very close to the NASDAQ 100, but not exactly. So we'll have to wait and see, everyone. But still, very, very, very good and exciting news here. Here's a statement from our good friend Pat Somerville. We're proud to introduce Canada's first suite of ETFs using 0 DT options with our Daymax lineup, CDAY, SDAY, and QDAY, giving income-focused investors a new way to generate higher and more frequent cash flow. More frequent cash flow. So maybe we're also going to get semi-monthly, or if we're even super lucky, weekly distributions. I would really, really like for Hamilton ETFs not only to be the first 0 DTE ETFs, but also the first weekly pairs. We'll have to wait and see. By writing daily call options. Okay, so there's my answer. It's going to be covered call. So daily call options and 25% leverage, attractive premium income, broad equity exposure. So diversified exposure and the potential to benefit from overnight market gains, which is kind of the same strategy that Roundhill does, I believe. So very exciting, guys. There's going to be 3 of them: CDAY, SDAY, and QDAY. CDAY is going to have exposure primarily but not exclusively to Canadian stocks, but I guess they'll be doing those 0 DTE options on the S&P or the NASDAQ. And I guess for SDAY is going to focus more on more diversified, so maybe S&P 500 I see SDAY being, and QDAY being more technology focused, so maybe this is going to be a NASDAQ 100. So $1 million question, right? What kind of yield are we expecting? Well, to figure that out, we have to see what the current 0 DTE covered call ETFs in the US are giving. You have the 2 more subdued with the yield boring ones. You have T-SPY, which is typically in the 14.5, 15. I-SPY from ProShares, if we look at the 12-month distribution, is about 14. So T-SPY and I-SPY, I think they do less covered calls, or when I say less covered calls, I mean maybe they're covering less of the portfolio or they're more out of the money versus, for example, XDTE and SDTY from Roundhill and YieldMax. You also have SPY-T from Defiance. So XDTE, the distribution rate is typically in the 25 to 30% range. SDTY, I think it's the same thing. It's a very, very, very similar strategy. But I don't think Hamilton is doing a synthetic strategy. These guys do a synthetic strategy, I believe. Then you have SPY-T, which is 20% yield, but this is a target yield and they're just doing a daily call spread. So 14%, 14%. This is more in the higher range of 25 to 30. This is 20. So guys, remember that these are not leveraged 25%. So I would assume, this is my guess, and I'm sure Hamilton's going to watch this video, but I would be very disappointed, first of all, if the yield is under 15%. Okay, if it's not at least 15, I would be shocked. But I think even 15 could do much better than that, because if you do, for example, let's just take the super low band yield here of these ones, 14. We add 25% leverage, you're looking at about 17.5. But again, they could easily get a 20% yield, right? If we do 20 plus 25%, that's in the 25% yield mark. So, if Hamilton is listening, if I would have to guess, and remember, they're definitely not going to be as aggressive. Yes, there's a 25% leverage, which helps boost the yield. But I don't think they're going to be like super aggressive when it comes to the moneyness of the call. So my guess, everyone, I think the yields, I don't know about the Canada one, but let's just say that the US ones, I would be very surprised if they would be less than 18. Like I think 17.5, 18 is the bare bone minimum using that calculation. But I have a strong suspicion. I really hope that they are at least 20% yield. I think they could easily make that 20% yield happen with that 25% leverage. So guys, very exciting. Obviously, there's going to be a new video coming out soon where we'll talk to Hamilton. I'm sure there's going to be more details as their web pages come up to know the holdings and the strategy and the management fees, etc., and also the distributions. Maybe we'll get weekly distribution, guys. Very exciting. Give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it if you liked the video. What are your top burning questions that you want to know about these 3 first 0 DTE covered call ETFs in Canada? Let me know in the comment section below. Are you excited for these? There's a million questions going on in my head. Are you going to swap? Or I'm sure I'm asking myself. I'm sure you're going to ask yourself this too. Are you going to swap your HYLD for SDAY? Are you going to swap your USCL for SDAY, your QQCL for DDAY, for QDAY? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see what's inside of them first, and it's very exciting. But hey, more options is always a good thing. So hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time, everyone.